All right, says it's streaming now. Welcome to Business Regulation Subcommittee. We have a few members on and a few people listening. Again, for individuals who are listening, please understand that you guys are here for information only. This is, if there's a question to be asked, of course, you know, we'd love your input, but if not, we're trying to get through these bills. We got a message from our chairman saying that we have to expedite these bills, get these hearings done and get things on the voting list or not. So that's what we're going to attempt to do today. Laura, we have the three broker bills. I'd like to start with those and just give a brief synopsis what each of them did, because I've done my research on what I'm envisioning, but I want to hear what the three bills themselves do.
Okay.
Start with 957.
Yep. Do you want me to scroll to the bill text so you all can see them, or just
You don't really have to. You just get there's because they're just yeah.
Okay. So you'll all remember that Delegate Conaway last week had three related bills about pawnbroker regulation. They sort of are three different approaches to addressing a problem he believes exists, in which some pawn shops are taking interest that they charge and converting it over into a fee. So House Bill 957 is the bill that prohibits a pawnbroker from converting interest charged on a pawn transaction into a fee that's collectible. The next bill, House Bill 958, prohibits the conversion of more than 10% of the interest charged on a transaction into a fee collectible by the pawnbroker within a 30-day period. And then House Bill 9. Sorry.
How do those two differ? If we were to pass 957, then would 958 be superfluous?
Yeah, 957, I think, is the one that goes the farthest. It just says you can't do it. And 958 is a bit more tailored in saying you can't convert more than a certain percentage of the interest into a fee. The last bill, House Bill 968, is the one that prohibits the conversion of an interest into a fee collectible and concurrently assessing an additional interest charge. So,
and I guess my confusion is from my younger pawning days is there was never really a interest, it was only a fee. You know, you pawn something for $100, the agreement is you pay $10 a month. That's what you have to pay in order to keep your pawn alive. So I guess my concern, I'm confused as I tried to get something out of the bill sponsor. I guess it was a little bit of a confusing hearing, but not really sure what the necessity is. I don't believe that people should be charging interest and switching it over, creating taking the converting interest into a fee. But to my knowledge, they don't do that. And this is one of those things, of course, when I spoke with one of our delegates who was involved in this in pawning, he said, this is not something they do, but they don't want this bill to pass. And I'm always, like the chairman says, a little confused. If you're not doing this, why does this bother you? I think if you're not converting interest into a fee, then why would you be offended if by statute you can't convert interest to a fee? Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I mean, I'm back to what are we trying to fix? I mean, you're asking the same question in a different way. We shouldn't just pass legislation because it doesn't offend. It rather should be passed because there's something wrong that needs to be, corrected. So I'm still of the basic opinion that what are we trying to really fix? Consumers have a choice. They can choose to do business or not do business with pawn shops. And I'm just not there. Now, I participated, I listened to the hearing, and I know we had three bills basically brought together in one hearing. So my problem is I don't know that I can differentiate between any of the three. Maybe you can do that, Chairman, but I'm confused by the whole issue.
Well, and that was what I was going to get to. To my knowledge, this was an individual, a single instance that got this going forward. And I just don't have enough input to know what would necessitate this bill. If somebody has something else to say, I really don't know why any of these bills are needed right now. Has anybody else heard of any of these problems in your district, or even from colleagues? Delegate Queen, have you heard of, I'm sorry, your hand's up. Jesus, I'm sorry. Please, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was on. Yeah, no, I raised my hand purposely. So no, I don't think I've heard of any in my district, but I wouldn't expect to hear them probably from my district. So that's a
I mean,
different.
you are MoCo, I get it, but you know,
Of course, that's a different conversation. But I think I'm like with what you said initially, though. They're not supposed to do it, so why would it hurt? Because they could be doing it some places. I would know that they're not, and I'm assuming I'm gonna make the assumption that because the sponsor brought it, somebody's doing it.
yeah, that's unfortunately, that's my pistivity is when they started pushing back by saying
Right.
we don't do this. I was like, well, then what's the problem? Besides, you don't want to be regulated. Nobody wants to be regulated. So,
I mean, I don't see a problem with just saying you can't convert a fee to.
and that's what I want to ask. I understand we don't know exactly why, and I know there's a theory of why push legislation if there's no problem, but if there's no problem, the legislation should also not be problematic. Seth, you look like you have something evil to say. You have a feeling on this at all?
Does he know what bill we're talking about? He just joined us.
So we're talking about 957. Do you know what bill? Do you remember that bill?
The 3 pawnbroker bills from Delegate Conaway.
This is converting the payment into interest.
Yeah, interest to a fee.
Yeah.
And I was told that they don't do it. I'm like, oh, okay, then what's the problem? I understand what you're saying, Chris. Because I really don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I really don't. And it's almost like, Lily, what's your opinion on this?
So are we trying to solve the problem of 1 or 2 bad apples in the industry so that it will never happen in the future? Because I understand the spirit of the bill is to be preventive, because we have seen probably 1 or 2 problems in a couple of instances, sounds like, right? So if that's the case, then maybe we could look at all 3 bills as one package and say, can we, maybe write the language so that we can move in that direction to say you cannot do that, or you can only do it to a point, whether it's 10 or whatever percent, but not. I also agree with what you said at the beginning, which is how the first 2 bills kind of cancel each other.
Okay, so Laura, what was the 3rd bill? What did the 3rd bill do?
The 3rd bill prohibits a pawnbroker from converting interest charged on a pawn transaction into a fee that's collectible by the pawnbroker and concurrently assessing interest. So you wouldn't be able to both convert and charge additional interest. So you can't convert it from interest to a fee and then continue charging interest. The only thing I wanted to mention is that the Consumer Protection Division, Steve Sakamoto-Wangle, has been messaging me because his name got invoked at the hearing. The sponsor mentioned he had been in touch with the Consumer Protection staff. And apparently Senator Kramer had a bill last year, Senate Bill 411, that basically took the Maryland consumer loan law and brought those parameters on interest rate caps and brought that over into the pawnbroker law. So he just wanted to raise that as another potential approach if you didn't want to ban the practice of converting interest into a fee. You could look at, that is, it's a little bit confusing when you look at the different limitations. It's like for the first $1,000 of a $2,000, loan. I can show you if you want, I can share a screen, but I only raised that to say that you were saying, well, maybe this is just his issue. He's a Montgomery County senator, so maybe that he's aware of a bigger issue that the committee didn't get the benefit really of any testimony on the bill. We had the sponsor and then we had written testimony in opposition from one group.
So, are you saying that there's already something in place for this?
So what I'm saying is the Office of Financial Regulation, the Commissioner of Financial Regulation, regulates loans, and pawn transactions aren't loans. It's more of a bailment where you're giving over an item, the possession of the item. You still own it technically. They're just holding on to it and giving you money. But sometimes the lines get blurred and it becomes a situation where financial regulation would oversee it. But generally speaking, pawn transactions aren't subject to the usury laws in the state. So there aren't caps on interest that can be charged. That's my
That
understanding.
is my question. Are they in line with the usury as far as caps on interest? And it doesn't seem like they are. And quite frankly, interest and fees are two separate things. And, you know, in my mind, and I don't know how the members feel about it, but in my mind, it's either one or the other. I don't feel like you should be able to collect a fee and then charge interest on the fee. Because
That's where I basically was about 957 as well. You know, can't convert the interest into a fee. And that kind of runs the gambit for his other two. It's not something I don't think you should do one or the other. And they chose by their business model to use a fee, then that's what they get to own.
or
That-
interest. Then that's what they get to own, but they don't get to convert that to a fee.
Right.
Because that interest is probably prorated out. So, you know, you pick it up on the second, but that interest is drawn out for the month, I would imagine. Is that correct?
Correct.
Or does any other members have any other input as far as the way the interest would be collected and the time frame that it would be collected? In so much as, I guess, let me clarify, in so much as is that person pawns an item and they're charging interest, they go in and they pay for the item, but they're paying for the remainder of the interest on the remainder of the balance for the remainder of the month.
Instead of the fee that they agreed to pay.
Right.
Yeah. Personally, I'm fine with moving forward 957, which kind of would get, you know, it doesn't allow them to do both. It allows, you know, you can do the interest, but you can't turn interest to a fee. From what I've heard, they don't really do it anyway. So I think it's somewhat innocuous for the few that do. And like Laura said, apparently this is a bigger issue if we've already had people delving into this bill in years past, and that's from Montgomery County. There's probably only one pawn shop. So how do the rest, so because I want to get moving, guys. 957, is there anybody has any issues with moving that forward? Besides Mark, we'll just assume he's a no.
I just have a question, Mr. Chairman. So 957 in scope is broader, more sweeping than 958. So we would categorically ban the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of percentage, which means we ban 100%, basically.
Yes.
And from that, you know, if you could remind me of that hearing, why is there a bill in place for the percentage if the practice itself is the problem?
His House Bill 958, if you'd like, I can share a screen, has so you can see the packet. Sorry.
She's the one that go and investigate.
Seth, are you logging on with your iPhone?
I was trying to,
Okay.
just because I was behind a few slow drivers.
I got you.
All right, let me scroll down.
But it wasn't working.
Says it's still trying.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Okay, this is House Bill 958. So it says a pawnbroker or other, can you all see this?
Mm-hmm.
A pawnbroker or other lending agent acting on behalf of a pawnbroker may convert not more than 10% of interest charged on a pawn transaction into a fee collectible by the pawnbroker within a 30-day period, beginning on the date of the conversion within the term of the pawn transaction.
I guess I just don't know why they're doing both anyway. And that's where I'm stuck at. Why the need for that?
Yeah, so I can show what 957 says in contrast if you like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is 957 says, pawnbroker or any other lending agent acting on behalf of a pawnbroker may not convert interest charged on a pawn transaction into a fee collectible by the pawnbroker.
So one of them bans it, one of them caps it.
Did we invite anybody on who's from the pawnbrokers?
I did. I invited the two lobbyists from Rifkin Livingston who were submitted written testimony, and I don't see them here.
And what was their opposition? Why did they oppose 957?
We submitted the same letter for all three bills, and it says, let's see. I'm paraphrasing, but it just says, basically pawnbrokers occupy a unique and valuable niche in Maryland's financial ecosystem. They're a lifeline for Marylanders facing difficult financial circumstances. They generally provide small dollar finance options and with no credit check for Marylanders when they may face an unexpected bill or emergency. Pawn transactions are non-recourse and do not affect a customer's credit history. Pawnbrokers are the only finance option that enables a customer to retain ownership of the item. Other financing items require the customer to sell the item entirely. Pawnbrokers have the unique role of documenting, warehousing, storing, securing, and ensuring a wide variety of personal property throughout the duration of a pawn transaction. This dynamic creates unique challenges and costs not encountered during other financial transactions. The terms and fees of a pawn transaction are outlined and disclosed in writing to the consumer prior to the agreement and a consumer's signature. The association, Maryland Pawnbrokers Association, is not aware of any issues that necessitate a change in the regulatory system as it pertains to pawnbrokers. The MPA is always willing to work with the committee and provide information to should questions arise. We respectfully request an unfavorable report on all three bills.
So they clearly did not specify how, if this is being done, if this bill passed, what the impact, a negative impact that would be done on this bill. The people I talked to said they don't even do it this way. That it's very, that there may be a few bad apples, but it's not something that they do.
And my question is, what are we doing here? Then why?
Because, well, yeah, but then we talked about so the Montgomery County senator who got into this last year. How about this? I apologize. Let me step back. We don't have that much information. We didn't really see anything in specific that was provided to show this being an issue. And while I do feel that we need to regulate, I get frustrated when people say they don't want to be regulated. I don't know with the limited amount of information we got and that there are any distinct damages being done. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, there's no Senate cross-file to this bill, or any three of them.
No, there's not. So,
I mean,
do I have a motion on 957?
Unfavorable.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All opposed? All
Chair,
in favor?
Mr. Chair, I think Vice Chair has something to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see your
No,
hand.
it's not a big deal. I should say, these people have to get a license. I mean, I think that there is a pretty heavy regulatory scheme. I have to admit, I don't know anything about it, but I'm just not sure. I mean, I'm not voting, but I don't have enough information to.
I wrote a lot of the pawn shop legislation in Prince George's County when I was a prosecutor, having to do with, and they are heavily regulated, without a doubt. And it's not like they just get over on everything. And if I had more complaints, more information, or at least something from the Attorney General to say, hey, we need to step in. I don't think should be in the habit of passing bills, for no reason, just to feel good bills. So did I get a second on that?
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
No,
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm not on mute.
Delegate Queen, you're opposing the no, right? Okay.
So is that 5-1? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. All right. Are you gonna, Mr. Chair, are you gonna have them take motions on the other two bills?
I might as well, I guess.
I'll take unfavorable on both of those.
I know, but
Second.
one at a time, right?
Yeah, one at a time.
Do I have a motion on 958?
Second.
Unfavorable.
Second.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor of the unfavorable?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Okay. 968.
Do I have a motion?
Unfavorable.
Move. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Lily, are you opposed to this one?
No,
Are you in favor?
okay. I meant to say aye, whatever.
Okay. All right, so all those in favor of 968 going down, is there any opposed to the unfavorable? Okay.
Okay.
So if we could go back to the first, what's the number, what's the nomenclature?
685.
685. All right, this is another one where one of the things I'm going to be proposing, and this is just to, of course, I will get everybody's input, is because I know that, from last few times this bill's come through that, BWI is in competition with Dulles and Reagan National in this region, and on pay scale, that's all a part of it, making sure that we're competitive. And what I haven't seen is anything from the Maryland Aviation Authority, the MAA, studying the surrounding areas and the wage disparity, if there indeed is one. We keep getting told as to, I think that the way this bill, I think that maybe it's Reagan will hit the $15 an hour 1 year before Maryland does as a whole, meaning I'm not sure. I'm still not really wrapping my mind because I haven't heard anything about huge turnover. I've heard allegations, but I've not seen anything about, are you actually losing people consistently, especially in the jobs that this covers, and also making sure that we are indeed competitive with the other two airports. Are we way behind? Where do we need to be? I haven't really seen that yet because one of the goals is to be competitive. We can't compare ourselves to LAX or New York or Boston. We need to be competitive with the two jurisdictions or two airports in our region. And what I have, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Mr. Chair, and based on that, I didn't hear any testimony about people leaving BWI to go work at any of those other two airports at all.
And because I want to do this right, there's not been a study done. They picked a number, but I don't know why they picked that number. These are my just general thoughts after reading the bill, going through the testimony, is trying to understand beyond, and this sounds rude, but I can't think of another word, beyond the money grab of it, beyond we want to get paid more, which I get, that's everybody all the time, I get it. The rationale in comparison to our other airports, I haven't really seen that comparison yet. And I don't think that the airport administration hasn't really done crap on this. I don't think did they even weigh in, Laura? The aviation, whatever they're called.
I don't recall them. I'm looking at the testimony now.
I don't think they did.
Well, you got informational testimony from one of the state agencies.
Yeah, but that's not helpful. Trying to find out where we actually are as far as with these other two airports.
We got MDOT. We got MDOT testimony. So is Maryland Aviation Administration under MDOT? I'm not sure.
I think so.
Okay,
Yes, it is.
so it's actually a letter of opposition from MDOT.
Oh, but more to the point is, what is it? If we're missing something as far as the treatment of our employees, what we're missing, because the reason this really sticks in my craw is 70% of the people that this would benefit, they're covered by union. I mean, the Teamsters didn't even testify on this bill. That's almost all of Southwest. There's individuals, so it's like they're covered by union contracts. They've already entered into, and they've agreed upon these salaries and conditions prior to this bill being entered. So after looking it over, it's like roughly 70% of all the individuals are already covered by negotiated contracts. And I'm really not sure, beyond wanting more money, what the actual onus is. Delegate Queen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to and I understand your perspective of we should have some data to drive that. That does make a lot of sense. But what I wanted to ask was, we've heard this bill before, so did we not pass it before, or did we ask for a study before, or we just said, hey, we can't deal with it?
Because we were dealing with minimum wage. We're like, we can't do minimum wage and this.
Gotcha.
And you've been here a while, that they keep coming back. It's like, this time what I know they did is they did narrowly tailor, because I know I had issue last time with the hazardous duty pay, which is what they were kind of arguing. I was like, okay, but if you work up front, there's no hazardous duty when you're working at the donut shop. And they were saying, well, what about the individuals that are dealing with the gas? The individuals that are, dealing with the customer's are dealing with the baggage. And that's where I saw this bill narrowly tailored to. But the question then became, number one, the contracts that have already been negotiated, and two, how are we in comparison to the other two jurisdictions?
Which is a good question. So I guess my point would be, if we're not going to pass this bill, could we ask for that study?
Oh, with that, that's my goal.
Data.
That would be my goal, and to make sure the Maryland Airport Authority is the one that does it, and we get good comparative data to find out where, as far as our employees and the employees that are similarly situated in the other two.
Right. So those who are in sort of that hazard pay or in a different, yeah.
Right, because
Okay,
I do want to put this to rest, because I know it's going to keep coming back. I'd like to put it to rest,
Yeah.
but I would like to do so with some data more than just, hey, this is what we want and this is why we think we should get it. Because I understand
No,
that.
I agree.
So, Laura, what I would like to do, and I'm not going to cut off, there are other people that can talk. I would like to, I know we don't like doing studies, but this would be something we would ask for a report from the Maryland Aviation Association, or what am I looking at? Authority, that they go in and they do a comparative study for wages with these in similar situated workers.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Veronica. I'll get you, Seth.
Okay, Mr. Chair, can you tell me when did we hear this bill again? I'm looking through I'm getting all these bills confused, okay? So I just want to make sure I'm on the right track on this bill. And I'm looking through all of my notes. When did we hear this bill? Can you tell me one more time, then I can go through my notes?
Was it last Friday?
February 9th.
February the 9th? Oh, no wonder. I'm way up here. February the 9th. And we heard this bill. And I'm trying to figure out how many people was against this bill here. February.
Laura can give us the information, Delegate.
Okay.
You can tell us the number of opposition,
So we had, it's a fair amount of testimony in my file. We have support from some workers came and testified. SEIU 32BJ was in support. We had, let's see.
Does SEIU have any workers involved?
SEIU 1199 was in support.
Oh, yes, they do.
1199 doesn't, though.
No, 1199
Right,
does.
that's what I meant. Okay.
No, 32BJ.
They do.
The AFL-CIO, Maryland Poor Campaign. And then we had, that's just a few, Economic Policy Institute, and then unfavorable was Southwest. I know we have Sean Malone on the line, who represents them.
And
Restaurant
here we are.
Association from Melvin Thompson, Maryland Judiciary, Greater Baltimore Committee, Maryland Motor Coach Association.
Well,
I guess we had support from Baltimore County and Anne Arundel County. I should say that also.
Sure.
County executives.
So it has not had a study on this bill.
No.
Because I'm kind of leaning towards CT. We need a study on this bill. Okay, I know 32BJ. I know all the problems of 32BJ with this bill.
Uh-huh.
Why they want this bill.
Sure.
Okay. And it's important. I've heard a lot from their constituents. I just can't vote killing this bill. So I can't do this.
Well, I wasn't asking you to kill, but if you have to vote for it, I totally get it. But what I would be asking is before we pass anything, i.e. we take this bill, transform it into a study to get the necessary information we need with all the background knowledge so we can determine how we can maintain our competitiveness within the region with the other two, make sure we're not behind, but make sure we're also competitive.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, hold on one second. Joy, are you raising your hand?
Yes. Former Senator Roger Mano says they have a study.
Oh, okay. From who? No. Okay. I will say it again. And please don't do that. We don't need, if I have a question, I'll ask. You don't have to input from anybody else, Joy.
Okay.
If the study's not if it's a study, I don't need a slanted study from somebody who's trying to get a bill passed. I need a study from an official agency. And Laura, have we received any studies from any of our agencies any of our objective agencies.
Not that I've seen. I mean, I'm looking, I wonder if Senator Mann is talking about the Economic Policy Institute's.
I'm sure, and that's definitely not what I'm asking for.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen a study from a state agency. It's not to say it doesn't exist. I just,
Well, and I would have thought if something would have existed, it'd have been put forth by either the opponents or the proponents. So that's what leads me to believe it doesn't exist. And I believe this is something that the Aviation Authority can do. Lily, what's your opinion on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm thinking, are you talking about a study which is cross-regional kind of study to look at how 3 airports are competitive in our business sort of a payment infrastructure and the scale or things like that?
To make sure we're competitive with the other 2 airports. We're not far behind, but we're also competitive, as far as attracting business.
Okay.
That's,
yeah.
Okay, what's going on, Chris? What's up, Chris?
I just wanted to add, for the sake of the conversation, page 5, Laura's information, lines 23 through 26. The rights of covered employees to bargain collectively with their employers through representatives whom the covered employees choose to establish wages or other conditions of employment in excess of the applicable minimum wage under this subtitle. So the subtitle does not stop, and this is what's crazy about this. If the unions are supporting it, they're actually saying if we already collectively bargained for a rate higher than what they would get otherwise under the law, then we don't want to diminish that from happening. I don't know whether I agree or disagree with that happening. What I'm questioning is why do you have to have that part of this bill in place if there's a problem to begin with? So for a study, and I'm not necessarily against the idea of a study.
I was trying not to jump down that path unless we really needed to, as far as specific line by line. If we could, without the requisite information, I believe we may need to make the proper determination.
In any study, I'd be curious, and I'd have to think about how to word it, but I'd be curious why a bill is supported by the unions at the same time they're protecting their covered employees who collectively bargain for rates are probably going to be higher than what the bill actually calls for. Let me think about how that would be worded. We don't have to answer that now, but
right.
I just drop that particular conversation.
I believe that would be every union's goal, to make sure that, hey, if we come in and it comes to find out our guys should be getting paid lower, we still want to be getting paid higher. Because we negotiated for that. But if we negotiated lower, catch up. We need to catch up.
Delegate Adams, this is, if I could just respond, one of the amendments that Southwest is proposing would say that a covered employee does not include an employee who receives wages or benefits under the terms of a collective bargaining agreement. So Southwest was proposing to take those employees out of the bill.
Yeah, that was an amendment, and I saw the amendments. Again, I don't know what direction we're supposed to be going in, or how high we're supposed to be going in. What's the median? Where do we need to be, again, to make sure we take care of our people but remain competitive? So, that's where I'm at, guys. And Lily, your hands up.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand. So what if our study comes back showing, just like what you were alluding to, that our Maryland side is already paying higher? And there's a very good chance of that because, we are a labor-friendly state. So there is a chance of that. And I'd have no idea if that's true. Maybe
we would be armed with that knowledge we would be armed with the knowledge of our competitiveness when it comes to passing this bill next year. And maybe this would also give them something more viable, a more viable target to shoot at. If the report comes back, they're already competitive. That would, because to me, it dissipates a lot of that argument as to why we need to do this. So they would have to bring additional information as far as why Maryland or why BWI needs to be the highest paid and how much higher do they need to be paid. I think I'm doing this for us because we're the ones who ultimately who own these votes. I want to make sure that we are armed with all the knowledge that we can have for these serious conversations. And I also try and keep in mind, like Southwest or all these airlines, I know they've gotten bailouts, but I also know they've also taken huge hits. But I don't want to use the COVID argument because COVID will end. And where are we going to be? Where are our employees going to be? And where are we going to, and how do we, stack out against the rest of them? So that's why if it does come back, I'm sure that doesn't mean this bill dies, but now we all have that understanding of just how Maryland is doing comparatively to the other, and to ensure that we keep Southwest. I would like them to remain. I would like us to remain a hub for Southwest. And again, I appreciate the fact that nobody came in and said, "Oh, if you pass this, we're leaving," because that always gives me a little more urge to pass it and call them on their bluff. And while nobody did that, I do understand the reality of sometimes it may happen. So that's why I was pushing that. Seth,
Go ahead, Veronica. I'm sorry.
go ahead, Veronica.
Oh, okay. Mr. Chair, you know that I am for the working families and I am for the members. You know this for a fact. Okay.
doubt.
I have heard it for months and weeks about how the employees are treated at BWI. So if we have this study, will this study include the treatment of the people, also the treatment of the members that's there, about how that BWI is treating their employees, and not just, money is important too, but I'm talking about benefits and I'm talking about they don't have no insurance, they don't have no money, they don't have
All those things are what I would like, because that gives us, you're right. If they're getting a higher salary but no benefits, well, we're behind. Because, or if their quality of life is so bad because they're working mandatory shifts, then of course we're not really competitive, even if they get paid more. So that's a great point, that it's not just salaries, it's the the quality of life, the benefits, things of that nature. Now, mind you, as we understand it, these are all contracts and subcontracts. So it's very difficult at times to get yourself involved with a specific subcontractor who's carrying this contract for up to 5 years. Like I said, we're talking about Southwest employees. To get involved in how they treat their employees can be very difficult. But yeah, we should at least know that, because if they're treating people fairly poorly there, well, maybe they do need a little bump in salary to make sure we continue to keep, the same people. But I would also like to see, as part of the study, the attrition rate. And the attrition rate can't just be from this year, because this has been a year, anybody's got a job ain't leaving. But, the last, 4 or 5 years, and compare that to the other airports. Mm-hmm. And I would ask anybody on this, not on this call, any elected official, in my subcommittee, including the vice chair, if you guys have ideas of what you'd like in the study, please contact Laura. She'll get with me any ideas. Okay. Hopefully we can get them all in. They got to be legal, but for the most part, because I do want to know that I want to make sure we're doing this right, and we don't have to do this again. If we do this, we don't have to, if we do it right with the information we need, we don't have to do it again. So if any of you guys have information, the number of contracts that are there, the number of subcontracts, I'm sure we could go into the whole minority business, relationships, and how many MBEs are actually participating. I don't think that has anything to do with this specifically. So that's what I'm saying. Keep it relevant to what we're trying to determine here when it comes to the lifestyle and well-being and welfare of the employees at BWI.
Okay. How many contracts? Okay, I'm taking notes.
And make sure you just get these to Laura. Seth, you look like you have another question.
I don't see a problem with having more clarity and information. So, as far as decision making is concerned, being military like you, I like all the intelligence I can get, but before I make a decision. But at the end of the day, these folks are covered by a union whose sole mission and purpose is to negotiate these types of contracts and rates and those type of things. And it just seems like, given the nature of the arguments as far as access to secured areas and those type of things, and fuel and these type of things, those would have been at the forefront of union contract negotiations. It seems like, based on the nature of this bill, they weren't. And I just feel like this is, well, the unions didn't really negotiate to what we wanted, or didn't negotiate for us at all, or we were sort of on a back burner. And so we'll come to the legislature and to do the negotiation for us. And I just feel like that's contrary to the mission and purpose of the union. And quite frankly, when it comes to a study, I get it. And I think that there's some valuable information to be gleaned from a study, but at the end of the day, that's the job of the unions. And it just seems like they're coming back to the legislature going, well, the unions didn't negotiate a proper raise increase or benefit increase or whatever. And it's solely within the power of the unions to do that. So why aren't they doing it?
Well, two things.
The states to pay for it to do it.
Two things on that, Seth. First of all, they're not all covered by the unions. Like I said, roughly 70%
Right.
of them are negotiated benefits packages. Some aren't. Secondly, when it comes to that, as you know, Maryland has this horrible idea of lowest bid. And a lot of times that means, hey, if I can pay my guys $10 an hour, I can get that bid with maybe, if I'm lucky, 3%, a 3% wiggle room, I'll get that contract. And we might need to understand that that lowest bid can't be at that low number anymore because although you got that contract, these individuals aren't getting paid their worth. So I agree with what you're saying, but that's not always negotiated. I know that from what my wife does when, is these Maryland contracts are always low. Whoever puts in the lowest number and says the right things, they get the job. That does not necessarily mean that those people are getting treated like they should. They're getting the benefits that we would like them to get, or they're getting the pay that we want them to have. That's where this study would come in.
I just want to make it clear to union leaders that the recourse of action is not to leave certain people or this contract or whatever off the table. So, because we'll just come back to the legislature later and legislate it. I don't want to set that precedent.
And again, without a doubt. But again, like I said, they're not all supported by labor. They're not all under some labor contract, and we need to be mindful of those individuals too. And if
Absolutely.
And also this gives you that, information you need, because maybe the solution is to deal with individuals who are not covered by a labor contract, who don't fall within the union. Maybe that's who we deal with once we get the information that we so need. Okay.
Fair enough.
Laura, did I ask for too much on this one?
No.
Yes.
No,
So I can draft some amendments to
no.
strike the bill and set up a study. It sounds like is what you're asking for.
Correct.
And you'd like the study to be done by the Maryland Aviation Administration, possibly. I don't know if they would need to consult with the Maryland Department of Labor, because the bill had enforcement and all of that under labor.
That's what I was going to ask the Vice Chair. Vice Chair.
I think either labor or the aviation, the bill actually applies also to the Port of Baltimore. I mean, the Maryland Transportation Department's letter addresses more than just BWI. It's
Right.
Penn Station and
You're right.
the port and whatever. So if you're looking for somebody to do the work, maybe it's the Department of Transportation, labor or transportation, I don't care, or them in combination.
Combination, I think. Yeah, that's a good point, because we keep talking
thank you,
about
Madam
the
Vice.
airport. We keep talking about the airport like it's the only thing. We do have the Port of Baltimore, and that's again where a lot of those folks aren't covered by unions. So that would
Although
be,
what they say and the Department of Transportation says is that the port wins awards because of the way from the Coast Guard and others on how they pay people. I have no idea,
right.
but
This is, and once we
but
get
it's
the
the
numbers,
port and Penn Station and the airport.
right, and hopefully this allows to put this to rest once and for all next year, colleagues. So, and like I said, she's going to draft the letter or the amendments. If anybody has anything specific they would like to get in this study, please contact Laura, and we can get this done. Are there any questions? I guess we need to have we don't do a motion yet. We have to get the amendments first, right?
Yeah, I'd like you all to take a look. Just, the Vice
Yeah,
Chair
we
just
will.
brought up a valid plan. I'd like to make sure I'm not missing anything when we're putting the amendment together.
If we could pay attention on the floor, I know it's hard to do. There's got to be, I'm trying to find out if there's a way, Madam Vice Chair, to do the sua sponte or last minute just voting sessions, because it would be nice when Laura gets this drafted to just be able to quickly, hey, everybody stay online, from our committee meeting or our voting session, and that we quickly vote. Now, I don't know how that jives with the whole live streaming thing.
I think you still have to do a separate, you can sort of say we're going to have a business regulation subcommittee meeting immediately following, but I do think a separate link has to go
And it
out.
takes 2 days to get that link.
Oh, you're kidding.
Is that right, Joy? Or maybe she's just slow. I don't know, but I know that
That's-
You
Sure
mean,
she's not.
do you mean A delegation meeting or a subcommittee meeting?
Subcommittee.
Subcommittee.
No, subcommittee meeting, we can get it as soon as Denise can put it in. It's different. with the
So maybe we can start doing that too, guys. Like at the end of, if we want to get something out, especially something like this we've already discussed, that all we have to do is review it. If Laura can get that done, we don't have to have that. We don't have to wait till our next subcommittee meeting to get this done. Okay? Because I know the chairman wants this stuff off his desk as quickly as possible.
So do we want to say maybe everyone could try to get me anything for the study by when? Wednesday, midday or something?
Yeah.
And then,
I was going to say COB tomorrow, but if you want to do
okay.
it.
No, that's fine. Close the business tomorrow.
Close business
And
tomorrow,
then-
please. Delegate Turner, any ideas?
I'm writing,
Oh, I
okay,
know.
okay, so, get you some of the amendments by closing day tomorrow, Tuesday.
Yes, ma'am. Delegate Queen?
Thanks. Quick question. You mentioned something, and I just want to make sure how far we want to keep this in the scope. We don't want to talk about issues of procurement in here, because I did have a bill in some years ago about how Maryland doesn't use best value, and this low bid stuff is a problem. And
Well, I would love to work with you on that, because that's going to be next year's bill for me. Because
okay,
with it-
all
yeah,
right,
that would
because
be a
we
great
do
bill to
need to
work with.
understand
We
that,
need-
because they told me they didn't understand best value, and I'm like,
They-
you're down the street from the federal government. Best value is what we do all the time.
all the time, and man, you would get so much more bang for your buck. So maybe that's something you and I can work on next year. But no,
Okay.
we can't do that
All right.
this year.
All
Okay.
right.
Well, I think we've covered everything, haven't we, Laura?
Yep.
Outstanding. Well, Madam Vice Chair, any words of wisdom?
Not at the moment.
Okay, guys.
Thanks for asking.
If nobody else has anything, thank for everybody who's listening, who wanted to provide input but couldn't. Thank you for listening anyway. And I'll see you guys at 4:30 for a voting session. Don't forget.
Yep.
Right.
Take care,
Bye.
guys.
See you guys. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.